I confirmed that no AI tools were used in the preparation or completion of this assessment. This submission aligns with the AITS-1 of the Artificial Intelligence Transparency Scale. Hi, my name is Nereus Avlonas, and I study games design and development. For the Specialist Pathways module, I chose the tabletop role-playing option, where my task was to create a single-player narrative-focused board game. I chose this pathway as I have been playing board games of different genres throughout my life, and yet the prompt of a single-player narrative-focused game was outside of my knowledge and comfort zone, and so I decided to challenge myself with it. For this project, I decided to make a board game where you play as a bartender and must talk to your customers to guide them through their problems whilst making them drinks. I've always loved the aesthetic of bartenders in games and have been wanting to make a game like this for a while, so I decided to use this idea as a base while trying to expand on its narrative elements. While making the game, I tried focusing on making the process of talking with the customers as fun and interactive as possible by including branching dialogue and focusing on themes that are timeless but also very relevant today. The main problem I wanted to address through this project is expanding my current skill set by creating a mechanically unique and narratively deep game, despite my limited knowledge on the genre of single-player narrative tabletop games. I started this project by researching the genre and playing various board games of that type. The one thing I concluded after playing through various of these games is that a lot of them play similarly to point-and-click adventures or visual novels, without introducing any actual interesting gameplay mechanics. I set off to improve on this by creating gameplay mechanics that both added to the game's narrative aspects and to the rest of its gameplay. To do this, I split the gameplay into two parts: serving and discussing with special customers, and serving normal customers. The customers' service would both be done in essentially the same way, that being a fully fleshed out system of combining ingredients to create drinks from specific recipes. However, this mechanic has a different function across the two gameplay sections. For interactive customers you talk with, the drinks you make represent your dialogue options, and each drink's effects aim to present different emotional beats within the dialogue. Meanwhile, for normal customers, this feature is a customizable and creative system that allows the player to mix and match components to create their own concoctions. I came across several challenges within this project, with the first one being creating what I could deem as a concept creative and interesting enough for the single player narrative game that could expand on the genre. This process took a lot of trial and error, and I ended up scrapping two other game concepts since I could not find enough ways to give them a narrative focus. I also faced several challenges whilst creating my game, mostly involving the translation of video game mechanics into tabletop form. One such mechanic was the ingredient cooldown. With this mechanic, I wanted to both increase the game's difficulty and force the player to create new combinations and drinks every round instead of using the same ones. The other mechanic that was difficult to implement was the order and randomization of the customers. I wanted the player to encounter randomized customers during each shift to increase replayability while keeping characters important to the narrative in a set order. When it comes to the generation of the game's concept, I went through several other ideas first without reaching anything conclusive. I solved this core issue by reversing my thought process and thinking of what aesthetic and story elements I wanted to focus on before trying to figure anything else out. This process was very valuable, as every aspect of the game came to me naturally after deciding on the bartender theming. Gameplay issues such as the card cooldown and customer order were both solved through playtesting with very simplistic versions of the final game. Through this playtesting, I observed the amount of ingredients that were in use during every service, something that helped me both create the cooldown system and balance the ingredient stats accordingly. This also highlighted some key issues during customer service, where a lot of customers' orders were not possible to be made unless the player had some specific ingredients. To solve this, I both adjusted the stats of all ingredients and customers, but also created a more balanced starting lineup of ingredients and recipes. The organization of normal and special customers was also solved through playtesting, as I concluded that, at the very least for the board game prototype, the best solution was to have a set order for customers during each shift, while having the normal customers randomly shuffled into that order. This helped balance a more relaxed gameplay of serving customers with a more deep, narrative-focused gameplay of serving special customers. The final rate I ended on was roughly 2 to 4 normal customers per special customer to break up the gameplay as evenly as possible. For those now resolved challenges, I've gained a new appreciation for physical prototypes at the early stage of a game, as this process made me visualize my board game more clearly and outline all of its issues. In this game, you play as the bartender Edward Reeve, who has returned to his hometown of Wrightsmith to revive the declining town and guide its residents through their problems. During every shift, you will discern your customers' needs and create the ideal drink for them from a selection of ingredients with unique effects. Throughout your shift, you will encounter various special customers who need someone to talk to. You must discuss with these customers and guide them towards the right decisions before serving them the right drink to further encourage them. At the end of your shift, you will get a selection of recipes, ingredients, and abilities to choose from based on your performance. The main story of The Bartender revolves around themes of change and tradition, and the player must bridge the gap between the older and younger residents of the town to mend their relationships. This prototype board game consists of an instruction booklet that also includes setup instructions, components that are ready to directly print and play, and a storybook. The core gameplay loop of The Bartender is as follows: draw a customer card from the current day's deck, then create a drink from your recipes and ingredients, then serve the customer and checking your results, and then discarding the customer card and putting your ingredients on the appropriate cooldown. If you draw a special customer card, you will need to go to the storybook and follow the story from there, and then end on the same final steps as previously mentioned. Customer cards have a line of text showing their order that also contains certain keywords that relate to their preferred stats. For example, a customer that wants something syrupy and cool actually wants something with high sweetness and refreshment stats. After creating your drink and serving it, you will need to check that customer's preferences in the last page of the instruction booklet to check the rewards or penalties. If you manage to meet or exceed that customer's preferences, which appears green stats, you will gain a reward. Some customers will also have failure conditions, which appear as red stats, and exceeding them means failure. Recipe cards are the blueprint of the game's drinks and determine the type and amount of ingredients you can use for it. The list on the right side are the ingredients you must or may use. They also grant your drink with an additional stat boost upon completion. To create your drink, you must stack its recipe on top of the used ingredients on the drink space and add up their stat total. Ingredient cards have unique stats that are added or subtracted to the total when making a drink. They are separated into different ingredient types that are used to differentiate them within recipes. When an ingredient card is used for a drink, their cooldown, which is depicted on the top right of the card, goes in effect. Ingredient cooldown goes down by 1 at the end of each service, except for the service they were used in. This means that 0 cooldown ingredients immediately go back to your deck, while those with higher ones remain on the side temporarily. Upon successfully serving a customer, you will get rating stars. These stars are shown on a separate rating board and determine the amount of rewards you get after each day. The type of rewards you get are determined by the milestones of 10, 15, and 20 rating stars, and hitting them all means getting a new recipe, ingredient, and ability card. Ability cards are separated into normal abilities and permanent abilities. Normal ability cards can be used at any time as long as their conditions are fulfilled, and can be used a specific number of times each. Permanent ability cards have continuous effects that are constantly active, however, only one of those can be in play at the same time. I'm fairly satisfied with my work on The Bartender. However, there are several things I wish I approached differently. My main issue is the game has a lack of content. Because of the full game would be separated into chapters, each with their own focal storyline and returning characters, I could only include one of those chapters for the sake of the prototype. This limited my options by a lot since I tried incorporating several themes from throughout the full game, but could not include all of them due to the time constraints. I also would have liked to include more branching dialogue options and longer conversations between characters. However, even the existing dialogue within the storybook took a lot of planning and preparation to complete. However, I'm overall satisfied with the game's concept and execution, and believe that I've successfully innovated on the genre of single-player narrative board games. As I previously mentioned, the first step I would take in further developing my game is adding more chapters to the game, each focusing on different themes and characters within the game's story. In terms of story, I would give characters more branching options for dialogue that lead to separate paths and give them more rewards they can give to the player, such as ingredients and recipes. In terms of gameplay mechanics, I would add more recipes and ingredients with special effects or unlock conditions, and would also include some special status effects or conditions for customers that make them more fun to deal with.